All right, welcome to today's episode of the Ari Lewis Show here on Israel National Radio, Root Sheva, and the show is syndicated as Messiah Hour on YouTube. Go to YouTube and type in Messiah Hour with Ari Lewis, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. It is free to do so. And of course, you can email me at messiahhour@gmail.com, and you can find episodes of this program, along with sharing of big rabbis, lectures from historians, on JApp, www.j-app.me. You can download JApp from iTunes or Google Play stores. Is Islam an evil religion, and are the people evil? Let's get right to the point with our guest this afternoon, a frequent contributor to the Jerusalem Post and well-known writer, Ze'ev Ben Yechiel. Ze'ev, welcome back to the show.
Heidi ho, neighborinos. How are you doing, Ari?
It's great to have you back on. And part of the reason we've done this show, or we're doing this show, is a comment you mentioned to me a few days ago talking about if Islam actually is an evil religion. So give us your thoughts generally if it is an evil religion.
So I'll start by paraphrasing the words of Rabbi Avram Yitzchak Cook, who noted that there is truth and there's good in every belief system that has gained any kind of serious following and has achieved any kind of continuity, and as well as any kind of ideology. All the isms, communism, capitalism, socialism, they all have, there's a reason why Hashem had them come into the world, allowed them to come into the world, and they all have what to contribute to the landscape of human endeavor and thought and society. And the same goes for Islam. It's a religion that's a lot closer to Judaic monotheism than Christianity. I can tell you personally, when I spent some time in Istanbul, I felt a lot more at home culturally than I did in a lot of the Western European cities, and I think part of that is because it's still got a strong element of Muslim traditionalism mixed in with democracy, of course, but or at least relative democracy compared to what rules and what reigns in most Arabic-speaking countries today. And that's the problem, which is that we have a religion that by itself, when divorced from state control, is manageable, but the essence of Islam, very similarly to Judaism, is that there's no concept of separation of church and state the way we put it in the West. The state is a religious institution. It is governed by Sharia law, and the biggest problem is that Sharia law mandates, as an integral part of the Quran, that the practitioners of adherents of Islam have to engage in jihad. And there's some that will argue that it's just spiritual jihad, but the bottom line is it's directly from the Quran. It says they do not submit willingly. You can try to convince a person to alter their spiritual orientation towards Islam and submit to the doctrine of Islam. But if they resist, then you have to convert them by force. And if they continue to resist, then you have to kill them. Jihad mandates the forceful takeover of the world, of the entire human population, with the goal of submitting everyone to the rule of Islam. That is a major problem. It puts it in direct conflict with any other form of culture or civilization that's ever existed. And it continues to exist today. And for that reason, Islam is perceived as evil by many people in the West who don't want to see the future of their country threatened by the spread of this ideology. In Islam, there's a concept that the world is divided into two spheres. There's the Dar al-Islam, which is the realm of Islam. Those lands, those countries, states, places where Islam reigns already, and the rest of the world is called Dar al-Harb. Harb, of course, sounds very similar to the Hebrew word cherev, which means sword. And Dar el-Harb is the realm of war. In other words, the world is comprised of the realm of Islam, and every land that has not submitted to Islam is the realm of war, is the arena of war in which the Muslim Ummah, this global pan-nation, has to fight and to submit the population to Islam. There is no middle ground. There is no equilibrium where you can coexist with other cultures in Islam. It's an evangelizing religion to the most extreme extent that a belief system can be proselytizing. It's beyond evangelizing. It's beyond proselytizing. It is a world-conquering religion at its core.
Okay.
Let me just fight it.
Let me just jump in, because you talk about evangelizing. Christians do the same thing. I mean, actually, literally today at my apartment, someone woke me up because they were a J witness. I won't say out the name because it's kind of a name of God, and they handed me a flyer. Now they didn't blow me up. But I mean, there's a lot of Christianity is trying to convert non-Christians to religion. So
that was actually me in a costume. I apologize.
Oh, okay. Very good.
No, that's why I took I amended my words right away. It's far beyond any kind of proselytizing or evangelism that we know from Christianity. It is, or any other religion. Buddhism, Hinduism, they spread through the propagation of cultural propagation of beliefs. It was a matter of conveying the message to people, convincing them assimilation, but it doesn't have, none of these other belief systems have the legacy of forced, violent submission to the creed that Islam has. And of course, Christianity did have its crusader periods. Christianity did, the adherents of Christianity have collectively been responsible for the deaths of countless hundreds of thousands and probably totally millions of people for the sake of spreading their cause. But today, the Christian world has come to terms with the inevitability of having to make peace with the rest of the world. Islam is nowhere near that right now, and right now Islam is in its crusader phase. The problem and the thing that differentiates Islam from Christianity and Judaism in a very essential way is that the forceful conversion, the spread of the religion is an integral tenet of the faith. That's the problem. You can't divorce Islam from jihad. And again, you can't say that it's just a spiritual jihad, because it's very clear in the Quran states that if a person does not voluntarily submit to the rule of Islam in his public and private life, then he's liable to be forced, and you must force him to do so, and if he resists, then you have to kill him. And that's basically not an ideology or way of life or a national, social, cultural movement that can really coexist with anything else in the world. And it's a problem for the entire world to have to deal with, because it's basically Islam against the world. And I don't know if the answer is in either the total subjugation of the world to Islam or the total annihilation of Islam. I think, as in most things, there is going to have to be a middle ground that's going to be reached, which is some kind of lasting historical equilibrium that's going to enable Islam to live side by side with other belief systems or with non-belief systems, such as the secularity of the West and the post-Christian West, you can say. But in order for that to happen, the religion itself, the theology itself of Islam, the Quran itself, is going to need to be changed in a very fundamental way. It's going to have to be overhauled. We're talking about really an essentially different religion because, again, jihad is an integral part of the current Islamic faith. And so I don't know how such an overhaul could be effected. It's possible that you can influence Islamic movements and various Islamic sects to adopt a more civil, a more conciliatory hadith, which means the exegesis, the interpretation of the Quran, much like the Jews have the oral Torah, the Talmud, and all the oral traditions. Islam also has a large number of different sort of competing interpretations of the Quran, known as hadiths. But the problem is that they're not centralized, they're not organized, unified in any way. You have Sunni, you have Shia, you have the Sufis, you have the Wahhabis, you have a whole a sort of a disorganized jumble of different interpretations, and some are more peaceful like the Sufis, and some are more radically militant like the Wahhabists. But I think the only hope that the world has, other than the inevitable fight that's going to have to take place, military and civil confrontations with Muslims, is the support of the development of a more moderate Islam. And I think this is something that the West is making a big mistake in when they try to establish, America especially tries to establish these secular democracies in the Middle East to rule over Muslims who by and large don't respect the authority of these kind of secular governments. And I think the alternative, and a much smarter thing, much more productive method of trying to pacify Islamic nations is to encourage the rise of a more moderate form of Islam. And how you deal with that, how you deal with the fact that jihad is a part of it, it's going to have to be a radically different interpretation of jihad. Just like we no longer apply we actually never applied the concept of eye for an eye literally. The Jewish tradition always held that it was actually talking about monetary compensation, and they learned that out from the wording of those passages that talk about it. And so much in the same way, Islam is going to have to be reinterpreted in a radically different way if it's going to be able to coexist in any kind of stable equilibrium with the other civilizations of the world.
Again, you're listening to the Ari Lewis Show here on Root Sheva, Israel National Radio. The show is syndicated as Messiah Hour on YouTube. Go to YouTube and type in Messiah Hour with Ari Lewis and subscribe to the YouTube channel. It is free to do so. And, of course, the email is messiahhour@gmail.com. Our guest this afternoon is writer Ze'ev Ben Yechiel. Ze'ev, you mentioned that it sounded like Christianity went through a maturation process, you're saying, because they're not at the level of the Crusades, but Islam is. So why was it that Christianity went through that process if that's what you believe happened?
Well, these kind of militantly outward-oriented expansions of a culture are often associated with an actual internal decline in the culture. We can see in the history of Rome, at the height of its power around somewhere in the 2nd century BC, it had already begun to suffer the process of internal decay politically and economically, and the same thing holds for the Christian world, which in the Middle Ages, just as Muslim actually was beginning to experience its golden period in Spain and in the caliphates of North Africa and the Middle East, that produced enduring works of mathematics and astronomy that continued to influence very fundamentally our scientific world. That Europe was that Islam was really flourishing. Europe was backsliding into the Middle Ages, the Dark Ages, and And it was during those dark ages, at the depth of the darkness, about 1,000 years ago, 900 years ago, that the Crusades began popping up as a way to deal with, or a way of actually avoiding having to deal with the backsliding of their culture, of the Christians' culture. And today we see with the decline of the Ottoman Empire that began, well, let's say, for the sake of argument, over a couple hundred years ago, and that really accelerated with the Balkan Wars and loss of territory after World War I. That the Ottoman Empire, which had been the stable, relatively prosperous, and relatively advanced representative of the Muslim political world, Islamic political world, it really fell apart. All that was left was Turkey, which is no longer representative of the Muslim world, and isn't even Arab. And so with the fall of the Ottoman Empire, you just didn't have any kind of central control, authority, representation. And now in the Muslim Arab world, you have nations that were essentially created ex nihilo, out of nothing, with artificially drawn boundaries separating, demarcating different countries according to colonial agreements between France and Britain primarily. And these borders, of course, cut across ethnic lines and religious lines as well. So that in itself is enough to produce instability. And also the fact that the Middle East, the Muslim Middle East, no longer benefits from a centralized, relatively developed power like the Ottoman Empire is another reason why it's been backsliding for the last 100 years or so. But the bottom line is that the Muslim world has been backsliding, with the relative exception of Turkey, which is not caught up to Western Europe, certainly by any means, but is still much more developed than any of the Arab states, except for the Gulf states that, of course, has a tremendous amount of oil wealth, but very little cultural impact on the rest of the Muslim population in the Middle East.
Again, you're listening to the Ari Lewis Show here on Arut Sheva, Israel National Radio, and the show is syndicated as Messiah Hour on YouTube. Go to YouTube and type in Messiah Hour as Ari Lewis and subscribe to the YouTube channel. It is free to do so. Of course, a reminder that I'm on JApp. JApp is a Jewish application which has sharing for big rabbis, as well as lectures from historians and episodes of this program. You can download JApp from iTunes or Google Play stores or the website www.j-app.me. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or any episodes you'd like me to talk about in the future, anyone you'd like me to interview, email me messiahhour@gmail.com. And if you'd like to make a financial contribution to the program, you can do so through my PayPal account, which is israelsportsradio@yahoo.com. Before we go to commercial break, we're going to play some music from Danny Lewis. Danny Lewis is a guitar player and artist here in Jerusalem, and you can find his music by Googling him. His name is Danny Lewis, D-A-N-N-Y, then L-O-U-I-S. And you can find him on Bandcamp as well. So take it away, Danny.